All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We thought that this would be a wonderful opportunity to have a sit-down conversation or Q&A. Specifically, we wanted to have conversations surrounding the experiences of both being a peer who is within the LGBTQIA plus community, but also the experiences of getting to the point of being a peer. So we have some wonderful panelists with us today. Can I actually ask each of our panelists to introduce yourself, please?
No one
Whoever
go
wants
at
to.
once. Since I unmuted, I will, I guess.
Thanks.
Uh, I'm Maestria Rosa Marcello, forgetting my name here for a second. I am a trans person very proudly and very queer. To try to explain my identities would take a full PowerPoint. So I usually just say queer because it's just easier. I have been a part of the SCA since I was 5, and I have been a peer for 5 years with some plague in the mix of it.
Thank you.
I'll go. I'm Elizabeth Piper. I'm from Ontario. I have been a Laurel since 1991 and was out in a queer relationship in the SCA within a couple of years. And my first event was in 1977, so I think I might be the dinosaur of the group. And I took a break of about 15 years for elder care and to raise a neurodivergent child. I've been back about 10 years now.
Thank you.
I'm Baroness Disa. I am a member of the Order of the Laurel. I've been in the SCA since about 97, and I've been a Laurel since 2019, and I have been landed Baroness since 2020. Started September of 2020, so pandemic Baroness, which has been an adventure. I identify as bisexual, and I'm very open and proud of that. So that's me.
I'll go. Hi, my name is Ellen Burke-Phillip. I live in Ontario, and I am a member of the Order of the Laurel, and I have been one for about 6 years. I am ace and also bi, so riddle me that. And usually I just tell people that I'm queer because it's easier.
Okay. My name is Baroness Ana de la Serra. I am also from Ontario. I am a member of the Order of the Pelican. I have been playing in the SCA since approximately 2008. I was playing with a peripheral group for about 3 years before that. I am bisexual, and I am also part of a long-term polyamorous relationship. I have both a husband and wife. And we have raised 3 children in that relationship and have dealt with all of the interesting hurdles in modern society of that particular type. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I was a landed baroness for the Barony of Dragon's Mist, which is essentially the suburbs of Portland, Oregon, for 3 and a little bit years, just right before the pandemic. And I actually ended up stepping down just right before everything closed. And I'm very thankful for that, but I have huge admiration for our coronets that served through that particular situation, because that was very challenging. All right. So, Rosa, you said that you have a icebreaker question that you wanted to put out.
I guess I did kind of volunteer that. So a question that I kind of came up with myself after onto your 12th night was, why is representation of marginalized communities important? Specifically, I'm going to do one for gender diverse and ask them, but this one is obviously for queer identification. Yeah, that question.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and go first. I believe that this is important because, one, that includes me, and that affects the way that not only I get to participate in this group, but it also affects the way that my kids get to participate in this group. I currently have 3 children, one who is non-binary, one who is identified as lesbian and unsure of their actual gender role, and one who currently says that they are male but is not sure. So I have to be very protective of allowing them to have a neutral space to explore who they are. And for me, the SCA has always been a very good space full of folks that I know, love, and trust. And I feel more comfortable making sure that this continues to be that kind of space for my children. And so for me, this is a natural progression for the SCA to continue to be that welcoming family for my kids and for those folks that come after me.
I can go next, if that's okay. So I grew up in a rural Washington town, a very small town. I had a graduating class of 56 people. And it was not a place where it was okay to be queer. There was a lot of danger in that. And I experienced a lot of ugliness in that space. And I experienced even worse ugliness for my friends. As a bisexual, I can hide easily. But as I've gotten older, I've realized that I shouldn't do that. That as someone, and especially in the SCA, as someone in a leadership role, as a landed baroness and as a peer, I need to be out and I need to be open about who I am. My partner is male presenting, and if I don't stay out, I disappear. And I think that representation of the bisexual community is important because of that. Because if we are with someone of the same gender, we're seen as gay, and if we are with someone of the opposite gender, we are seen as straight. Thank you, Rhonda. So yeah, so I feel that representing in that way is very important.
I'm gonna pop in real quick and say that Harafna is here and she didn't get a chance to introduce herself. So I'm gonna let her go and then I will go after. Thank you.
Hi, Rafna. I'm a Knight of the Society. I'm also a Laurel. Did most of my SCA growing up in the Kingdom of Onstiora, but I recently moved to Ontario about a year ago. And absolutely. And that move was primarily because of Texas. I'll just put it that way. I grew up in Texas my entire life. I lived there for 40-something years. And I had learned kind of a similar story. I learned very early on that being any flavor of queer, especially in the rural area of Texas where I grew up until I was about 15, I think, not a positive environment. And I learned to just hide a lot of aspects of myself that I really shouldn't have had to. And really was the SCA in a large part to help me realize I could be myself and not have to hide any longer. I've been fairly open with as being bi for a very long time, but it wasn't until 2022 when I got up the courage to finally come out as trans and tell the world and show who I am. And I I was expecting the world to come crashing down for me to lose all my friends and everybody to abandon me, but to my massive surprise, 95% of folks were in the society were just amazingly supportive, and I can never pay that back.
I miss your face, Ravna.
I miss you too.
I have kind of a different story. I didn't come to my understanding of my queerness until much later in my life. I am in my 40s now, and it was not until I was in my late 30s that I learned that there was a word for what I was, and that I was not broken. And I really have my community of friends in the SCA to thank for helping me to understand that. And I want to pay that forward. And I want to create a safe space for the people who don't know who they are yet and have the space to explore that and to come to that understanding of themselves, whether that's as a kid or whether that's as an adult who thinks that she has it figured out and really doesn't. And I think that this is super important for me personally, because not only am I a Laurel in the society, but I also have a YouTube channel and I get a lot of comments on it. I'm very open about who I am there, and I'm very, very stringent about who I allow in that space and what kinds of comments that we get. And I received one this morning that that said, I'm a young adult and I'm trans and I'm queer, and this makes me feel like it could be safe for me. And so the ability to be able to do that and to be a beacon for people who are not even in the SCA yet, so important to me.
My story is strange, as a lot of queer folks are. I actually grew up in a very accepting household. Since I'm second gen, my parents have always allowed us to do things that make us happy. So I don't have quite the same trans story as some other of my community because my parents didn't question, they didn't gender things. I was very lucky to have parents from the 80s that didn't do gender roles. We got dolls, we got things. I was homeschooled, I was a foreign student, and then I went to a very heteronormative high school. There was no representation. I was confused why I liked guys and girls, but with not learning about my autism until a few years ago, I tried to follow societal norms and I failed at it horribly. Um, so overall, long story, very short, skip a few years. I came out right at the pandemic. A lot of us actually did in the community around 30 and 40 because we got a lot of time alone. And my big thing was I was tired of being unhappy. So I sat down and I thought, I was like, what's wrong? But the reason I brought up the question was at 12th night while sitting at my merchant booth, I had several gender diverse people just kind of whisper to me, but talk to me and be like, oh, we're the same people, we're of this. And just kind of like, I was like the secret society in the SCA. But later then I saw them go public about it. And I was just like, because I wear my trans pride medallion, because what I do, I like feeling seen and watching people be comfortable and on tier like, oh my gosh, the queer community is so open here and it's great.
Please go ahead, Elizabeth.
Okay, sure. So, for me, it matters because so in 1991, I was in a polyamorous relationship with a man and a woman living in Klamath Falls as the children's librarian. So we had the fake bedroom, and we're completely and totally closeted. As far as everybody knew, I was married to my husband, which was true, but it was like half my life. And things were so scary in that part of the world at that time that I wasn't even out to my SCA friends in the branch. People outside the branch knew what was going on. They just thought we got really distant. So we moved. We moved to Olympia, which is a different, you know, which was a much safer place. And at that point, we're very, very out in the SCA. And it was important to me because it was a place that we could be us. It was quite a long time ago. And so things like someday there might be a prince and a prince didn't occur to us. It was just about a place where we were physically safe and it was okay. And really, people were very sweet. It was fine. I'm actually trying to think whether there was any other out couple in Ontario at the time, and I'm not sure, but we might be the first. We're certainly one of the earliest. So, it's interesting because I hear people talking about, wanting more from their allies, and I just remember a point when what I wanted from my allies was that I knew that they wouldn't kill me. If they would interfere with somebody else who wanted to kill me, that was like frosting. But just the fact that they would, it was hard. So I don't want us to ever go back there. I really don't want us to go back there. And at this point, at 65, I feel like sometimes I'm, I try not to be out of touch with the world, but I do what I can. And but I also am aware that being at that point in time, there weren't very many role models for long-term gay relationships. I was a children's librarian. The books were all full of, if you were a gay kid, basically at some point in time, you would die. That was, in the storyline, that was almost always there. So I like to hope that we're a model of a long-term public gay relationship. So, but really, I just don't want to see us go backwards. I want it to continue to be a place that people can be safe and can be out.
Can I just say that you're a wonderful example, and my queer child absolutely looks up to you guys, and you've been such an amazing guide for her and for other people. So thank you for that.
I can absolutely second that. One of my treasured memories, Elizabeth, actually was Autumn War. Was it last year, Disa? My time is starting to melt together.
Yeah, last year.
Well,
yeah.
Everything there melted.
2022.
Okay, yeah. Autumn War, when we were all sitting together and you and your partner and myself and Disa, and then our children were all hanging out, and our children very affectionately referred to you as the elder gays, and just they were so happy and so proud and comfortable with the fact that this is their community and that they can talk about these things and it's normal. And that I think at the time, the reason that came about is because we were cross-referencing vocabulary and the way that vocabulary changes within our community from one age group to another. And it was just very interesting to sort of compare notes. And that entire situation just made my heart so happy. So you are amazing. And thank you for that. Thank you for being that for us and for our children and for this community.
also think that's the biggest reason I was so accepting knowing on tier would help me be gay and finding myself was because of you two.
I think that definitely speaks to another reason why it's so important for us to be as visible as we are. I don't know about anybody else, but I am a child of the 80s and 90s, and I didn't have queer elders. They were all dead. They all died. And the immense privilege that it is to become or be on my way to becoming a queer elder is one that a lot of people didn't get. And I want to live up to the generation that wasn't here to be that for us.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah, and again, kind of dovetailing or continuing the story of being present. I mean, just in the year and change that I've been publicly out, I've had probably close to a dozen people come to me and say, "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" And go to the side, and they say that, you know, me being out and seeing how welcoming everybody has been has given them courage to start their own journey. I'm not going to drop any names or anything like that, but just, I mean, every single time someone comes and tells me that, I just start bawling instantly. But it's I wish I had had that kind of role model. Most of the time, honest, to be really honest, the few other trans folks that I'd seen come out in society were treated pretty badly. And like several were effectively run out. I'm trying to see what I can do to maybe coax a couple back that I think that we're better because they're in. But and in fact, in my coming out letter, I had a paragraph in there saying, "You will not run me off. You're stuck with me. If you're going to be a bigot, sorry for the crudity, but you know, I wanted to be here and show other people that this can be a place for them."
Kind of going off of what you just said about that, I've had lots of adults come to me, like realizing, oh, I am bisexual. Oh, I am a late understanding lesbian, even though I've had kids and a marriage and but I've also, because I make myself purposely very open, I make myself available, that I've had several people in the society come to me about their kids. How do I help my kid? That are coming out trans. I've had people that do start and come to me and we just start talking and everything. And it's just great that I didn't realize, yeah, I wanted to help educate people because I had to learn how to be trans. I wanted other people to know like what hormones do to me, how surgery was going to go and everything. That I felt like gatekeeping all that information wasn't fair to everybody. So having the blog and wearing all the pride medallions is really, I've seen the smiles and faces of people that get to be their authentic selves.
Well, and not to undersell what you're doing, I mean, you're continuing to help. I mean, I'm wearing a piece of wire weaving that you created for me right here, and you're allowing people to display their pride in a very period fashion, which is really awesome. So
Yeah, I've had an interesting experience as a bi person who's very out and very public and in a leadership position. There have been a couple of situations that kind of shocked me where I guess I didn't realize it was as much of an issue for other people as it is for me, in not seeing that representation. And there were a couple of instances where somebody said something that was very in the bi-erasure land, and suddenly I had messages from all of these bi people, like, did you see this? Did you know this happened? Like, what do you think about this? And I was like, oh, holy cow, I'm okay. So it's been a very interesting experience too, as a peer and as a bi person. I just didn't realize until that point that it was something that was as much of an issue as it was. It's been very, very interesting. Very interesting.
That's funny. I hear all of you talking about essentially becoming sort of spokes for the pieces of our social group, and I've also had similar experiences, although I don't so much have interactions with other folks that are bisexual, but boy howdy do I get conversations about people who are in polyamorous relationships or who would like to be in polyamorous relationships. We are talking constantly about how do you make it work? You know, what how to communicate 101 is one of the biggest conversations I think that I have in my life on a daily basis. And it's just a very interesting thing because I've never realized how much there was a lack. So, I did want to take a moment. We have one more gentle that we wanted to invite into our panel. Magister Gnaeus Postumus Miro, who also goes by Mir. I'm going to go ahead and have them introduce themselves.
Yes, he will happily introduce himself. I just changed persona on everybody as I'm getting older and I'm getting warmer, so the Russian wasn't cutting it anymore at summer events. So I'm throwing everybody with a new name and stuff. So I had put in comments that when we did the FAFO Garb Challenge, and that's actually the tunic I'm wearing right now, not only the trans, yeah, that's the clavy, but it's a whole heck of a lot of yellow. And so the intersex flag is yellow with a purple annulated circle. So I took my pelican and put it in a helix representation to kind of throw down on the XTM, which is how I identify myself as intersex to male. I just recorrected the correction. But one of the things about On Tier is that they knew I had breasts, and I quit shaving at 30 year for events. And they were so okay with me that over my own pigheadedness and a few other things, elevated me to the pelican, knowing that I was something non-cis. And that's huge for my kingdom. I'm so proud of that piece. Anything else you wanted me to say in introducing? I should have asked.
How long have you been part of the SCA?
Anna Societatis 22, and everybody told me for years about 20th year and how I missed 20th year.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us. Panel, are there any other questions or topics that you in particular would like to cover, or do we want to open up for our audience to ask a question or two?
I had another thought that I just want to toss out there. We've all been talking about our personal experiences and our acceptance or non-acceptance, eventual acceptance by everybody kind of outside of the context of history. But one of the other reasons that I feel strongly about being open and being out in the SCA is to push back against that kind of Victorian idea of how the Middle Ages were, how the Renaissance was, the idea that everybody then had the same ideas and expectations of gender and the roles that they played. Because obviously we all know that is not the case, but a lot of people who claim to love history, but really take it in a different direction, that whole like golden ages and revising history to fit their narrative. I want to really push back against people who try and bring those ideas into the SCA. And one of the ways that I like to do that is to talk a lot about gender roles in history. So
Can I pick your brain later? Because that's what I'm doing.
absolutely.
Actually, my Kingdom ANS single entry is I'm doing gender diverse roles of history. And so that way mine's so far European centric because that's where I started, but I found some new books that got published last year but anyways, we need to connect off of this.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Pay me after. I
total-
have tons and tons of resources and access to a lot of scholarly articles too.
I'll spin up a conversation with you too.
Okay. Anyways,
I-
but that is something that because I kept hearing we're fed, like the trans community being in the news so often because we're fed, we're a new thing and stuff. So my autistic brain was like, I bet you we're not. And my special interest is finding all the queers in history, which surprisingly took a minute, but once I found them and started finding different resources, I am getting a full bookshelf eventually of queer history books. I have Russian now, I have African, I have peer study journals, because I wanted to know, where did we get written out? How were we more accepted back then than we are now? And it's just the 1800s when they started policing us and everything was affected, which I did read that book about female husbands. So there's a lot I wanted to learn, like, how can I represent myself as a queer peer? And actually at Kingdom and ANS, I'm going to try to make a non-binary Finnish Iron Age outfit based off of an intersex burial from Finland. So that way I can have an outfit that's actually non-binary and is documentable.
That is super cool.
I would say I did want to say, you know, talking about creating communities and stuff. I think the FAFO group has been kind of incredible on Facebook. I think that took off more than was anticipated, and it's been so positive and so wonderful and such a great place for people to just be safe and to be able to celebrate who they are and to do that in a historical setting. And I think it's just been so cool. So cool.
Well, I think that kind of spontaneous community is something that unfortunately a lot of queer folk are just used to building, because so many of us were ostracized from our blood relatives, you know, the folks that are supposed to support us regardless of who we are, right? So we've had to go off into the world and find our own, or build our own communities, our own families. So I think that actually puts us in a very strong position to find commonality in people and say, let's celebrate the things that make you you, find others who are of that same ilk, and party time. And the FAFO group was just, went from like nothing to thousands of members in like a month or something. It was just crazy.
So I think what I would like to add before we throw things open is that as somebody who came in kind of a long time ago, and I the concept of chivalry, not as fancy clothes and flowery language, but as integrity, it's really important to me. And there's no way that oppression of any kind can possibly be chivalric.
Sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot here, but this morning we actually had one of these panels on that very topic. I was blessed enough to be able to be part of it. It was interpreting the chivalric oaths through the DEI lens, and it was an amazing conversation. So it was recorded, so I highly recommend that you go find it, because it was such a good conversation.
Good, thank you. So that's, I love hearing about where we were in history, but I just keep wanting to tell people, you know, it doesn't matter, even if there was no historical precedent, if this all came if we just appeared out of nowhere, we're still here and we still matter. And it is never chivalric to be mean, cruel, oppressive, or anything else.
Yep. Correct.
Yeah.
And human rights are not politics.
No.
Yes.
That truly has been the fight for me, is that human rights are not politics. Humans are humans, period. And the idea of believe someone when they tell you who they are is a double-bladed knife. It goes both ways. It can be for positive, it can be for negative. And if someone tells you who they are, there's no reason for you to question that. So, okay. Do we have any questions from our audience? What would you guys like to talk about? What would you like to ask? Do you pronounce your name Una? Rosa, this is your partner?
I'm glad you asked because I forgot.
Oops, sorry, didn't mean to put you on the spot.
It's okay.
Okay, perfect. Una, we are going to be ecstatic to have you. We're very excited that you're going to be moving up here. I think honestly, find the things that you love, and follow them. Be you, and you will have a community here that will back you up for who you are. And my hope is that you will not have to deal with the speed bumps that folks have dealt with in other kingdoms or in the past. And if you do run into speed bumps, hopefully you will feel comfortable enough to come and chat with one of us and we can help iron them out.
They're definitely more extroverted than I am, so if they can't have me talk about it, they know I'll find somebody.
I'm
Yeah.
going to present the other medieval concept, shield wall.
Yes.
Shield wall,
100%.
absolutely. Absolutely.
That is correct. Yeah. I personally am one of those folks that has a hard time standing up for myself sometimes, but if my people are threatened, I can become very, very outspoken. So I can offer myself to you as a shield wall if that's what you need, but my hope is that you will not.
That's why I say I'm defender of pronouns, not necessarily my own, but I will make sure I dig it into you. Like other people have other pronouns they want. Josh had their hands up.
All right. Josh, please go ahead.
Hi, he, him, actually. That's fine.
Okay.
I should have put that on there. I don't know why I didn't. So maybe this is just because I got out of my own class talking about some SCA history and hearing that there are some people that have been in as long or longer than I have been in, and of course a fair number of people that have been in far less than I have been in, and that's been since about 91. And this is a topic that has come up before in my SCA life and the things that I do in the SCA. I'm curious how, if, or why not, your concept or awareness of Clan Bluefeather has been in any of your journeys. Because I get a lot of mixed signals about how the clan is perceived by the greater SCA community. So I have a random group of people that I do not know, and I'm just sort of doing some sociological gathering.
So, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Disa.
So I started in around 97. I've been aware of Clan Bluefeather for a long time. I actually when I was elevated to Laurel, Baroness Anna made a beautiful banner with a blue feather with a rainbow center with my heraldry on it for my elevation, and because representation matters, right? And it is something that I think people recognize. I think people recognize Clan Bluefeather as a safe space. I think that just knowing about knowing the fact that it existed was very helpful in my journey in the SCA as a queer person. Knowing that there was a group of people, that there was representation there, made a difference to me. That's been my experience with it.
I think I learned about Blue Feather pretty early on in my SCA experience, maybe early 90s, but time's a little fuzzy. And again, knowing that there was this group, and it kind of blew my mind that there were places where people had to gather for safety in a household, which is how it was presented to me. That in Ontier, we used it as an identifier. We've had Blue Feather socials, but mostly we have Blue Feather coding, referencing it, wearing it, that kind of thing. We heard about y'all first, or I did anyway, as queer people could be in the same SCA household and take care of each other, keep each other safe in kingdoms that weren't safe. And we had several conversations about, well, you know, this or that has happened, but really, no, we're fine. We're good. And I don't know how accurate we were about ourselves, but those were the conversations I was in.
So I've known about Blue Feather for a bit. But I also was part of a household pretty quickly who had members that had been part of Clan Blue Feather for a while before I even arrived on the scene. So that to me was pretty easily known, pretty much right off the bat for me. Having said that, I agree with Master Mir. In Ontier, at least, the Blue Feather has sort of become coding. And in particular, right before the pandemic happened, there was a very large movement, not just amongst individuals, but also amongst some of our branches even, that were displaying blue feathers as a symbol of this is a safe space. All are welcome here, to specifically call out, you know, we are not going to deal with intolerance. So I am a banner maker, and I can tell you that I made a epic number of blue feather banners for about 3.5 years. Like, to the point that I have a special color of blue for the feathers. So yes, we know about blue feathers. We love them.
So being second gen, I didn't really learn about blue feathers until I started drinking, because I didn't really see them other camps until I felt more comfortable leaving Pensic camp. I've actually participated in 4 different kingdoms: Collegium, Drachenwald, Midrome, and now Ontier. So I didn't really know about the blue feathers until a couple decades ago. No, now I can say that. Ew, sorry.
Sorry.
That I know. I just didn't realize the math was there already. Anyways, but I never felt queer enough, even though I thought I was bisexual. I actually came out at college as a bisexual man because I realized I liked more than just females, and that was a big crying moment as an RA at Western Michigan when I did that. But because I didn't know what queer or gay or anything really was, I never felt like I was a part of the clan. I knew it was a safe spot to go to, but yeah, it's hard to describe. Like, now, cool, I like them. I'm part of one of the Facebook groups and other things, and I know it's a resource. My dad loves wearing rainbows and had blue feathers, and sometimes I pay attention to what feathers I put in my hats and stuff. but overall, it was just kind of one of those. I didn't feel like I belonged for a long time.
Yeah, same. It didn't occur to me that, I could go and belong there because, as I said earlier, I came to this realization very late. But in Onstiora, there's not a huge presence as a household necessarily. It is very much a coding kind of thing. So much so that when I took my kiddo to Gulf War for their first time, the very first thing that they bought was a blue feather pendant.
So I first think I first heard about blue feather at 30 year as somebody in Ontier, because it wasn't really a thing here at that point. But there was a blue feather social at which I was just doing the math in my head. I know it was 30 years, so that must have been 96. So at that point, as I said, it was like Ontier was very welcoming of our queerness, of our bisexuality. That was fine, but mostly it was kind of a lonely thing. There weren't really very many of us, and so it was pretty cool at 30 year to just hang out with other folks. That was nice. Oh, you might have known about blue feather, and somebody just made a message. I just know I didn't particularly, so that was when I was aware of it, and I think it's because it wasn't a huge thing in Ontario, but maybe it wasn't. I just was out of the loop. So
Well, the clan started in 88, was named in 90, but because there was no social media, it took a while to spread past the East Kingdom. Well, spread outside of Pennsic, I should say. And I will say, I appreciate this. I appreciate hearing these stories because I've been around since 91 myself, and have been involved with the clan very much since. And it's one of those, what do you guys do sort of thing. Is I'll just make it clear. The clan is a household, but it's not a traditional SCA household. You're all blue feather. So the coding is exactly as intended. That was what the blue feather was created for, because back then there were no rainbow flags, or at least there weren't any rainbow flags nationally or internationally known. That wasn't until like well into the 90s. So I like hearing that the blue feather served its purpose. And the only thing I'll add is it still does. Everyone is a part of it. Everyone is welcome. Please do all the things and fly your feathers high. and your pride flags too. I mean, there's room for both.
That's wonderful. All right, we had another question in the chat. Edmund asked, for newbies to SCA scholarship, do you have any recommendations or resources you'd like to shout out? Anything that completely blew things up in a new way?
Let me go to my Facebook. I have a whole album.
All right.
Because I don't remember the names all the time.
That's fair.
Let's see. So one of the first books that I read, Same-Sex Unions in Pre-Modern Europe by John Boswell. Amazing book that touches everything from gender roles to trans people and priesthood to how gender roles were pretty much described, how the Catholic Church used to be queer. This book even has the same gender sermons in the back for marriage and ceremonies from the Catholic Church. It really got into depth of everything from ancient Rome on up until modern Europe, pretty much. That one by far really helped me learn what I needed to look for in history books. It gave me the vocab I needed because colonizers named us different things. Like another book that's out of period but has helped me find more in-period books is called Female Husbands, a trans history. That one is 1800s. It kind of explains how the United States started in the 1900s about how do we deal with people in the wrong gendered clothes, and kind of on from there. But it really explains like the privileges that men had and why female husbands were pretty much trans men at the time. So it's finding the vocabulary. And then also Transgender Warriors, written by Feinberg, is another good start for a book. And I'm reading some scholarly journals and other things. And if you want to find me at Roxanne Skelton on Facebook, I love talking about it. Profna definitely showed some really good books there. And I just
the
found
3 books that I put there, I highly recommend.
And I've got some Byzantine. I got 4 or 5 other books I still want to read that are behind me. I just can't think of their names, that are Eastern Europe, and I have a whole Amazon list of books I found for Africa, South America, America, and things. And talking to First Nation people, I can't wait to hear some Two-Spirit stories from them, from Draven and
Blink, blink, blink.
and stuff. And
That's actually a good segue to something that I was thinking to say, which is when we're looking at historic stuff, and this was really well presented by the Baron who did the trans history tracking panel. But part of how I confused all the volunteer is that First Nations thinking is that I was filling male social roles. And when you don't have surgery as an option, you kind of work around that. And so I was telling people that my gender was really confused, but I had male roles because that's how I knew how to say it. And in the white queer community, they said, "Oh, you're a butch." And I'm like, close enough. And so when you're reading history, you're going to find descriptions that aren't cut and dried for our modern understandings, or in this case for the European understandings, because my Salagi literally had, well, he's that way for a word.
I had a really interesting revelation about the Birka woman warrior grave. There's a really great book. I cannot remember the name of it right now. It focuses on 4 different graves at Birka in Sweden, and it discusses the possibility that is not a woman warrior, that is a transgender person, and it kind of it was really interesting because it kind of switches the thinking, right? Like, oh, right, no, that makes so much sense. They're wearing masculine clothing. They're buried with all of the masculine accoutrement that men were buried with at the time in Birka. And it's not the bones of Birka. I think it's called something like
buried at Birka.
Buried at Birka. Yeah.
Just a second. Citation incoming.
Thank you. It's fascinating. I recommend if you are of a Norse persona or in general, to check that out. But yeah, things just aren't presented necessarily in a straightforward way, right? For queer people in the past.
Well, this was actually mentioned in the chat earlier as sort of a tongue-in-cheek, but it comes back to that whole thing that I'm sure many folks in this community have heard. Oh, they were really good friends. Oh, they were roommates. we have to really look at these documented facts with a critical eye and say, does that make sense? You know, with the knowledge we have and the context we have, do we really think that that's what was actually happening?
I also pasted in a PhD thesis on analyses of Viking Age graves and gender roles, etc. It's like 300 pages and it's super academic, so you know.
Alrighty, so we have reached 5 o'clock.